All right. So there we go. So here's what we're going to be covering today. We're going to have kind of an overview, kind of our goals and what we've been doing. We're going to talk a little bit as kind of just an interface overview at a high level, kind of a couple of key things. Then we're going to discuss the student view, then the admin view, then what is perhaps the most common task and things that you end up doing, which is kind of getting students in. And then the second piece is looking at reports and chapters about students and what they're doing. All right, overview. So our goal here is over the last couple of years, we've received a lot of great feedback, especially from people like you who use it. And our system has been going through a variety of updates and will continue to do so based upon that great feedback you've been giving us. And so we have really three goals in doing the updates. So one is, how do we engage your students better? Two, how do we save you time? And three, how do we help your department succeed? So I'm going to talk just a little bit about each one of these so you understand kind of the why behind some of the decisions we make in the software. So first, in engaging your students. So one of the things, of course, we do know is that people do love to compare themselves to others. So we hope that we're kind of from the default using all the wonderful legal industry analytics we have available to us about successful and satisfied lawyers. We can help engage our students in that comparison process. But one of the things we found is that it's important to cover the many areas of life that students do care about if we want to fully engage them in this process. So one of those is beyond just success in law. We want to help your students cover success in studying, in work, their work relationships, communication, personal relationships, reducing stress, increasing happiness. All of these turn out to be important. And almost every counselor I've ever talked to will describe that many students that come to see you, nominally your title is maybe career counselor or career advisor, but you do a lot of counseling and advising on many categories that are beyond necessarily the normal scope of just their career. Many students' problem has to do with their personality conflict with another student or their roommate or all kinds of other challenges. And so in helping your students succeed, we find that we need to cover these extra areas to give you great content for the students and you to do that. In order to make that happen, we've added approximately 20 authors, a little bit more, to make this happen, bringing in their really great expertise and content. Here's just a sampling of some of the authors that are available that we use in this process. Each of them expertise often in very different areas. So really it's about then engaging those authors to help us in success, helping you and your students with success in these different areas. The second area we wanted to really help with student engagement was making it more self-directed so that they could take control of the process. So one thing we do is we've added a lot of videos. So now when you start the assessment and you get ready to follow that link, there's a video kind of explaining an overview of what the attorney assessment is and what it does. And we've also added videos to any of the other chapters where we feel like it started to get more complicated. And we're going to continue to add videos, especially with your feedback on where you're like, hey, could you have a video in this section so that we can now make sure to help students understand that. And another thing we did is we've made a move to make it less feel like an assessment. There's certainly some assessment parts, but in that self-discovery process, make it more game-like. And of course, it's a game about most people's favorite topic, themselves. So in that way, we're hoping to engage your students as well. We started to add more and more activities throughout the entire process, helping them with their self-awareness and their self-development. So individual chapters in the introduction will help students understand how to use it, engaging them right away. Now, another big thing we've heard a request for is how do we help reduce students being overwhelmed? And so that's another part we started to work on. And so we have a lot of great material. In fact, as you know, we've now added 20 authors. So we have a ton of great material. So we've really tried to arrange it into really bite-sized chapters that students can get a hold of and concrete and more solution-focused for that student. So our goal is to often give students just what they need when they need it. With that in mind, we've begun to really think about how 1L students have different needs than 3L students. They're looking for different things and they have different priorities that we need to address. And so we've been working on how do we make that happen, which is what we're going to talk about here today. So the second big feedback we've had is how do we help you save time? So First of all, we take that as the software by default is ready to go and deploy to your students right out of the box. And so we're often asking ourselves, how can we make the software work well right out of the box? And then you can focus your time where you need to. And of course, with our software, you can customize it as much as needed. We've continued to add more customization options. And in addition to that, we're always here to help you get it just the way you want it. So you're welcome to use the customization tools yourself. And you're also welcome to schedule a call. We'll get on a call or make a request and we'll just help you configure it so that it works exactly the way you want it to with your students. Of course, obviously the videos and clear instructions to students mean that that's work that maybe you don't have to go do, or at least when a student is confused, not if, there's ways to answer their questions right there in the software without them having to come bother you. And of course, all those self-directed activities for self-development mean that not only are the students doing things without you having to instruct it, but hopefully with that self-development and behavioral work, we're helpfully solving some problems for those students, and they never even need to bring those problems to your office. And another way we save you time is those mentoring insights, the mentoring chapters, where we're trying to create directed phrases and printable activities for each unique student that are ready to go. So that can minimize the amount of time you have to worry about prepping for a student. So the third big area where we want to help you is helping your department succeed. So great examples of this are how do we help you improve student retention, completion rates, satisfaction in their first jobs. And so that's one of the things we want to help you. So one of the ways we want to go do that is we want to help you with all the students. So some schools do this already, and this is becoming our recommendation, is just to send it to all incoming students. And so we don't charge you extra to send it to more students. So take advantage of this. Send it to students, as many students as you like. And as you'll see what we're talking today, we have reports for each year they are in law school. So this gives you more relevant report for students no matter which year they are in. So whether it's 1Ls, 2Ls, or 3Ls, you have something to offer these students to continue their engagement. And of course, we have lots of additional reports, chapters, and activities available to you to use as needed. And that's just available as part of our library. Another way we want to help you is we have now custom reports that are designed for other departments. So you can share this with other departments, student affairs, academic achievement, resident life, mentoring programs. And again, we don't charge you more money if you have additional admins from one of these departments, or whether students are sharing their reports with these other groups. So this is, again, something that doesn't cost you extra, and we're just trying to help you succeed. So now I'm going to give you a quick thought, kind of the really high level of the interface, and what I think of as really the super key to knowing what's happening, how to use everything. And that is the left panel. So whenever you're in the application, that left panel is your friend. That piece on the far left, that kind of bar you can see here. And it's a way for you to swap context. So you personally can swap between school view and student view. Obviously, it's where somebody can sign off or go look at their account details, update their name, update their gender pronouns, update their email. But it's up there for you, so you can swap to see kind of like your personal view, which would be kind of similar to student, or the school view. You can swap back and forth. But at the bottom left are links there all the time for both students and admins for help and documentation. So that's right. If your students contact us, call or text us, we'll happily answer their questions and help resolve those issues. And of course, you're welcome to do the same. Contact us and help. And we have that wonderful help in fact right there, that second option. And so we have detailed documentation where you can go out there, and it's an entire separate aspect of our app, which everything is detailed for students doing a tour through the app, as well as for administrators who are going through the different aspects of how that works. And so it's fully dynamic. As you can go around, you can look at different things. What do we mean by notifications? What is the people? And so if something wasn't covered clearly in the training and you have more questions, there's lots of great information out here on how to go look through any of this. And so we've got very detailed documentation with screenshots to help you do that, because we wanted you and your students to never feel lost. So we've really worked hard to make that available. So that's available to you at any time as well as your students. So now let's talk about the student view. So this is what your students see, or what you will see if you do it to the personal perspective. So if a student logs in, this is what they're going to see. So they're going to see this explore section. Explorables here, this is where people can go start the assessment. So whenever a student logs in, if they followed a link, we'll actually take them right into the assessment. But if they ever get lost, this is where they come back. And the very first thing at the top is explore, where we have any assessments they might have. This particular account has two, and they can see if it's incomplete or complete and just start it away. This explorables is additional content that may or may not be available. So if it's not, the student doesn't have any explorables, then they won't see that at all. So you don't have to worry about that. So this is the first part. The second part that students see is they see their reports. And so we set up the reports so that students can easily kind of see what the chapters are. There's a little introduction, and they can open it, and they can see by the green or the red whether they've opened that report or not. So we've really tried to optimize it to make it easy to understand, especially if you have multiple reports. What is it? How do I use it? And what is that text? This particular account has a lot of reports to simulate what it might look like if your student has gone all the way through 3L and is now looking at that. We now have a new interface called chapters. So what chapter does is it see all these individual chapters. Who am I? 4 styles. So these would have been the report sections that you used to see if you're used to the old interface. You can now just look at the chapters by themselves. So it automatically sees, well, because of you have these reports, we know what chapters you have. And so if they've forgotten where a chapter was, or, hey, I wanted help with my studying. Oh, there it is. They can just search and find what they're looking for. So we wanted students to feel not overwhelmed in the interface. And so they can use it to filter, they can favorite particular report chapters, they can search by tags, authors, and whether they've edited or done polishing or not. So that is part of the way that works. And so you'll see this polish icon, this little icon here, that's to represent how many chapters they've potentially done polish. So all students and you, when they're going through the reports, can use the tool to automatically highlight or do strike through on things we recommend highlighting for things that are them, or strike through that are for not them. They can make comments, they can do other kinds of information. They can add tasks for themselves. And so you can, when you're looking at students' reports, you can see the entries they've made. So it's an asynchronous way for you and the students to interface with their report. And we've now, many of our activities have, for example, many of the chapters now have activities that help students understand how they might go through this. So here, as you can see, this student has started to do some work on this, and they can go look at this, and it walks them through how to take advantage of this kind of self-directed activity in their reports. So you don't have to print it out. You can do it right in the report. So students don't need to leave it. Many students we find are getting to the point where they don't like to print out lots of things. And so we wanted to make it as easy as possible for students to just literally modify their own reports in this way. And so then this is how you can begin to see how that plays together. Polish is where we just show all these entries together. So if they want to, they can just come by and say, yep, just show me all of my tasks, or yep, show me comments, show me just strike throughs. And they can, if there's multiple comments from another staff member, they can see, oh, just show me comments by the staff member. And it can also be sorted by most recent comment. So again, it's not necessary. It's just a feature that they can use, and we encourage students use so that they can take notes and really engage with their material more fully. And if you have time to work with the student, it gives you another method to work with it. Finally, students can connect, use the connect feature to go make sure that they can go see related users that they're connected with and how that fits together. And so that's an important way in helping them go do that. They can see, this is how they can share with their other people that are specifically like close to them. And finally, profile is, think of this as a little bit like a LinkedIn profile or how to work with me. So they can send it to fellow students, but think of this as like a specialized custom report that a student can make public. So they control whether it's public or not, and they can see what chapters they have and specifically build a very customized profile that's exactly the way they want to see it. And so that's the goal there, is so they can send this to potentially coworkers or students that they're working with or a teacher. And this is a way for or potentially even if they're going on an internship, hey, this is a how to work with me. And so again, this is a feature that students can access to completely control how they share this wonderful information they have about themselves. So if they have this profile, they have this view profile and there's a link there. So they can just share that link with anybody they want. So if they just open a browser tab and paste, then what it's going to do is it's going to load that person's report profile link. So you can see profile and then some long string of characters. But so that's what it is that they can just copy that and send that to students. So and they can customize the image, this title, how to work with me. They can add a video if they want. All this introduction text they can control. This is about how to work with me. So they can control this. And so they can then modify these report chapters and move them around, etc. So now we're going to talk about the admin view, and I'm going to highlight how that looks for you. Okay. So this, when you log into the admin side, you'll notice there's a slightly paler color here. So there's a dark appearance when it's in the personal view, and there's a lighter appearance when you're in the admin view. So here you can see that you're in organization demo, and you can go around and look at that. So the first thing you're going to do is the people, which shows the most recent people to join an organization. So at the top will be somebody who's ever most recently completed the assessment. The check mark indicates students if they've done an extra verification, which I'm going to talk about later in the presentation. You can choose a report. However many reports you have, you can just click to open a report on a student. The other way to think about detail on a student is then to click this and look with more detail. So you can see what reports they've looked at, what reports they have access to, what reports they don't have access to, and whether they've looked at those reports or not. So you can control and see whether students have looked at their reports before they go do that. See this here? This is where you can see their entries and you can go look at their chapters. So this is effectively what the sharing does, is it would say, oh, you can go look at their profile if it's public. You can go look at their polish entries and you can go look at their chapters. So you can go just click that button to go look at that view. So you can kind of see that from their viewpoint and go look at that. So this is how they do that. You can also see what groups they're in. So like this person is in 1L students, and you can also see what other results they have. And this goes down into the psychological models and tells you exactly what results they have across several different models. It's often a lot easier to look at this inside the inside their tallies here or inside that results. So to show you what that looks like in tallies, to look at their details. So what we're doing here is we're showing you how they scored across several psychological models in addition to the Sheffield. So you can see this person is how they came up ENFP over ENTP, if you know the 16. You can also look at cognitive functions, which also sometimes we call superpower, and you can see how that plays out. You can also look at essential motivator, which in the world is often called temperament. You also can see this as true colors, and also you can finally look at interaction styles, which some people know as DISC or social styles. So we're measuring a number of other psychological models, not just the Sheffield, to really look at different dimensions. And so you have that information transparently available to you as a counselor if you like any of those particular models. Of course, if that's something you don't want to dig into, you can just ignore that and just look at the reports, because as you noticed during our reports, we're not focused on explaining the model. We focus on how do we make it solution focused to the student's perspective. So that's how we handle people. So in addition, you also have a groups tab, and this is all the different groups, how you can get links to send students to get access to their reports and other information. So it's a way to group the data. You can also look at reports by groups if you have any group reports. So a good example might be, okay, we have a 2L students group. So you can look at exactly what reports they get And this is, if you control that, you can hit the link, copy that link. This is what you would send a 2L student. And you can see what other assessments, like the attorney assessment, of course, is assigned to them. And if you wanted to expand any explorable modules, and you can see the individuals. So again, most of this you set up once and then you're done, and then you're just going to continue to use it. But it's always here for you to manage and control as much as you want. And again, we're happy to help you make adjustments. If you want to change how you're doing it, we're happy to log in and help you with that, as well as talk through what might be a best fit for your organization. We're going to talk about the groups and how to use them a little bit more in the presentation. And finally, there's a Manage tab. And this is where you go in to make some more of those customization. So this is where you see the existing reports. And you can click on those reports, and you can then edit them to do things as you like. So you might say, I want to edit this career guidance report. I'm going to pop it up. Here you can change the name. You can change the description. That introduction at the top, you can change this. You can add an image. You can do whatever directions you want students to have. And then down here, it's a simple drag and drop. So here's the chapters they can see. And here's the chapters you can search by. So you can search by anything. Let's see. Oh, I want to search for that, how to talk to me. I want to add that. I want to make this chapter first. And then whenever you're ready to, you can preview the report with some demo information. And so this way, we gave you the control to update the reports when and how you need to. If you find a section is confusing to students, remove it and then give it to them later at some other circumstance. So there's ways we want you to feel full control in this process. And so we give you that control. We're happy to set up all the defaults so it's ready to go, and you can control all that. And again, you can see the other attorney assessment. You can edit the introduction. So this would allow you to edit what they see right before they take the assessment, or what they see right after they complete the assessment. So for example, if you don't want to give them reports right after they complete and you want them to come see you first, great. You can customize what they see when they're done with the assessment. So you can tell them that and talk about that. So our goal is to just make this really easy for you to go use. And then finally, you'll see this little inbox here. What this is think of this as just kind of like an organizational history of notifications. So what's happened in your organization, who finished it, a report was added to a group. So it's kind of like an audit log that you have at your fingertips. We don't find most people use this, but it is there if you want it. Again, most of the time you're going to do people. Occasionally you will do groups or manage when you're doing setup. And again, we typically by default have your organization logo here, but if you need to update your organization logo, you can do that here. You can also upgrade anybody who's taken the assessment to an admin, or just add a new admin if you need to. And this determines whether they get emails or not. So when a student completes an assessment, if this is turned on to green, that means that person will receive an email notification that the assessment was completed. So you can have that off or you can turn that on. It just depends upon how your organization works. This is probably the most important thing it's worth getting right for your organization and getting that all set up, getting students in. And really, that goes back to those groups I just showed you. So it's the primary tool for getting students into attorney assessment and getting through the process. And it also determines which reports they get. So this is, and these groups determine what report students see and get access to. And that's that part of the group interface. So right there, you get to see which reports are accessible by individual of this group. And that little plus button is how you just add more reports. So you can look at any of the reports in your library and just automatically add them to that process. Additionally, it determines the links you send students. So that's that link there. So that's the link. You can just copy that link and then just send it to students. And so you send students the link and they click it. So these are just easy HTML links that can be shared with students. For example, that's a link right there for that organization demo. But those links can be sent to students in an email. You can add it to an internal website so the students can just click it themselves. You can also share it with any other communication tools used by your school. It could be in a PDF. It's just a clickable link in a PDF that you share the PDFs with students. So we wanted to use links so that you had as much flexibility as possible on how you shared that with students. They just click it and go right away. And broadly, we have 3 kind of recommended strategies for schools on how to interact between the reports and the groups and the students, and how best to work with them. So these are the three kind of strategies. Broadly, we call it the one group strategy, the class group strategy, and the school year groups strategy. And in the one group, you have just one group, and you add one link that you send to all students. So that would look a little bit like that. You just have a student group, and so you send that link to everybody. And that's perfect for when you prefer to use one big report, like they're just getting one report, or you prefer to start all students in the same place and then only give them more reports individually when they see you. And you can do that in that people detail page. You could just add a report to an individual student on that page as often as you want to. So if you're here, you're looking at an individual student, you can just say accessible reports. I want to add this report to that student. Just click and you're done. Second strategy, we call this the class groups. So you create one group for each graduating class and you send each graduating class their own link. So that would look like this: class of 2023 and class of 2024, each with their own link. So this allows you to easily add more reports later to the entire class all at once. You would just go into that group interface and add a report. So for example, you might have 2 reports to start, and then another in October, and then another in March, depending upon the school's process and what you want to go do. So it really gives you kind of really direct engagements with each class in a way that kind of allows you to customize how that class is going through the process. The third year are as we call school year groups. And that's where you create one group for each school year. You send all 2Ls the same link each year, and like 3Ls have a different link. So that would look like this. So you have kind of 3 different groups, one for each of the school years. So this allows you to easily post the links to a website and let students click the link as a self-service. The links are evergreen year after year. One advantage to this is if a student is really engaged and loving all the self-directed activity, they've clicked the 1L link, they've gone through it, and they're actually ready to go do the 2L. It doesn't hurt. Allow them to get the extra reports and go do that extra work to go do that. And so we find that that's another way to go think about it, is just manage it that way. And of course, you can mix and match as desired. There's no reason you can't use all 3 sets of groups and use them in different ways. It's up to you. It's all about what kind of goal you want to have and how you want that to execute with your students. So reports and chapters. So we've now designed a recommended set of reports. So this is a total of 8 reports that are sequential, spread out over all 3 years. We don't expect people to become lawyers with one book and one session. In our classes, we don't expect people to maximize self-awareness and self-development with one report at one moment. And so we've really tried to go make it fit the students and their process. So what this looks like is, if you can go out to our attorney assessment website, and we have here a list of recommended reports. You can see it on some other links here. It's also a link in the PDF. So we recommend a sequence of 8 reports. We have 3 reports and 1L, and we tell you a little bit about what's in each report and what we're doing and why that report is there. So this set of text here is designed for you as the counselors, to understand what it is we're trying to do with this report and accomplish. Therefore, if you can help know when to send it to students, if you want to use your own schedule, or find out what you might want to do to adjust it or add more chapters. And so each one of these has a distinct introduction that is for the students. So the report has its own introduction to help students understand how to leverage it. And then each one of the chapters has self-directed, self-paced activities they can go do in this process. And so our goal there is to really spread it out and really give each student the bite-sized components they need when they need it. And that's our goal. So there's a link. So when you get the slides, you can click that to go right there, but it's also just click around the website and you can get to it. So each report has a specific introduction, and each chapter has 1 or more activities for the students. So our goal is to really help the students engage with the content, not just an immense report with a bunch of report chapters they may or may not pay attention to, but a few report chapters, and really help them understand how to leverage them and use them in their school year. So with all this additional content, we've created a process. We're using tags to help basically think of it be the kind of key to understanding. So you see that when you're looking at the reports there, you can see the tags where you can see that's okay, this is self-development and school. We also show it when you're working on editing a report. We show you right there what tags are in each report chapter. So these tags are the key to understanding the entire library of chapters. So you know what they are. So let me explain that a little bit. So the first is kind of a very high level tag: self-discovery, self-awareness, or self-development. It looks a little bit like this. You'll see it kind of listed first because it's kind of a high level. And so think of self-discovery as that kind of high level view of a person, and it's intended to be descriptive. So it's describing who they are. The second level is self-awareness. And here we're going kind of a layer deeper. We're coming down from that really high overview fly into now a more detailed perspective. And self-awareness is we're now trying to help that student understand themselves in context. So it could be in context of, in this case, working as a lawyer. It could be in context of their communication. It could be in context of other ways of communicating. So we're trying to help them understand it in a way that makes it more pragmatic in the real world. And then finally, self-development says we're going down to the nitty-gritty. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And this is where we're trying to help them make behavior change. Literally learn the skills, the tactics, the strategies, the behavior change they can make, either internally or as skills, that will help them be more successful based upon their mental characteristics. The second tag that's most important to you to be aware of is anytime you see the legal tag. So any chapter with this tag, what we're telling you is it's specifically leveraging the 22 Sheffield traits we measure, and it's with part of that giant comparison data set of lawyers across all 22 traits. So you can see that there. So you can see if you see pound legal, you know that this is using that legal data. That also means if you don't see that legal tag, like you'll see the first or second chapter there don't, that means it's not using the Sheffield and the comparison data set, and is instead using one of the other psychological models we take advantage of: the MBTI, Jungian typology, temperament disc, etc. And again, we don't foreground that to the student, but that's really more for your information so that you understand and can explain it easily if a student has a question. So again, and for you, when you're looking at those report chapters, you can see exactly what psychological model is being leveraged in that particular report chapter. So you know that. So the next kind of tag you're going to see is one called mentor advice. And when you see that, that tag means it is not written for the student. It is instead about the student. And so these chapters are really intended for counselors and mentors. So it contains advice to help you troubleshoot and deal with challenges. The next tag is printable activities. So these chapters include a special activity that is ready to be printed and handed to a student. So some mentor chapters have it, but some chapters students have a printable activity they can do themselves. It can also be saved as a PDF and sent to a student. And thirdly, you could just print it out and work with it together in a session with them. So think of it as a prepared activity that if you're planning to spend a half hour, an hour with a student, there's a session activity you can do right there that's ready to go. We have other frequent tags that we think might be helpful in knowing about. Most of them we think are pretty self-explanatory. It's about stress, it's about communication, relationships, problem solving in school. There's a few less frequent tags that we want you to know at least what they're about, but you probably don't need to track that a lot. So when it says analytics, you just know that there's some complex analytics to help build that. Some of the legal sections use this. Mental diversity means we're going to try to help that student understand other perspectives in comparison, people who don't think like them, how do they do it differently? Expanded development means we have kind of a lot of developmental behavioral recommendations in there, just so it's an awareness. Teaching, that means it's for teachers. It's probably not likely you're going to use this tag a lot, but sometimes like K through 12 schools might, if they're using some of this kinds of content. And that would be if there is a law school professor that is looking to improve their teaching. That would be something they could use. And then finally, it's pretty, mostly this will only be seen by our Singapore and Asian schools. but we do have an additional data set of Singapore-based legal comparisons. So if you see Singapore and you are not in Singapore, there's maybe let us know, but just we do have a tag to indicate that there are other data sets that you can do comparisons on. And finally, these tags help students as well. They get to see it here, like when they're looking at their reports or when they're looking at their chapters. And so the goal there is to just help them understand what it's about, help them understand what they're doing, help them easily find and filter what they need, especially as they get a lot of reports. They want to just like, hey, I'm feeling stressed. I'm pretty sure there was some stress in the 5 reports I was given over the last 3 years. How do I just search that? And again, students keep access after they've left the school. So if in their first year of work, they're like, wow, I'm way more stressed than I thought, they can come back here, search for tags on stress, and look through the report chapters that are likely to help them. One of our goals is to make sure that they never have to remember what report a chapter was in. They could just use the chapters, the tags, to just quickly jump to what it is that they're looking for. So now I want to talk about kind of 3 reports in detail as examples of how it all fits together and how it fits together in our process. So first is this, all schools have a career services mentoring report. And the goal here is this is all stuff that's focused for you as you're ready to go into a meeting with a student, or if a student has communicated to you their problems. So it's across a variety of categories, keys to better learning, reducing stress and buildings. And these are all targeted at, have that mentor advice, which means they're targeted to help you be phrases. So it has phrases specifically designed for you, like caution Angela not to assume that her typical ability to wing it with any person or any subject is enough. Preparation and thoughtfulness are important and can take a star performer stand out even more. We also identify common behaviors that their personality type can lead to as troubleshooting. So one of those might be, for this person, enthusiasm is enough. And then finally, the activities, like this, print this handout. You can see here as well. So they can just print this handout out, and you can just hand that to the student or save it as a PDF. And so we have each of these under different ones, and including like building relationships and networking is a little bit more robust, and even has 2 different activities to go work that. Activity 1, and then a second activity as a more advanced process with instructions and activities. So we're really trying to, how do we just make it super easy and save you time in working with a student and really give you the best power of this underlying psychological knowledge about a student and leverage it in a way that's pragmatic and solution focused. So that's the first kind of report. This report here is an example of a report that a student will get as part of that process of going through those 8 recommended reports. So this report is typically delivered second. We number it just to make sure that there's no confusion for the students. They can follow the reports in order. If you want to, you can remove the numbers, especially when you're editing the report, and just deliver it in whatever way you want. So we have a pre-built introduction that talks to the student about how to use the report. Again, you can edit this and update this if there's additional changes you would like to make to this. And then each one of the activities is going to have a variety of components to make that work. So, so here you can see this activity is popping up with a way to go see that. And you can see that they are walking through that process and how to go do that. And then here they have they can expand to look more detail, but they walk them through that. Same thing here, this practice area detailed analysis, we walk them through the activity. This one also, because it's a little bit more complicated, we literally have a video, a 4-minute video that talks the student how to understand this ranking of the practice areas. This is such an important section for students, how we compare them to the practice areas and show this. And you'll notice that we're just kind of ranking them there. We're not overwhelming them with the scores. We just show them that, we give them a video, we give them an activity, and this one also has a printable activity. So all this is available for students to go do that process and go make that work. So this is a great example of how we've taken previous sections and started to break it down into bite-sized chunks. So how do we identifying a student's contribution and making it count across practice areas? So we have some very detailed recommendations in that process. And in this practice area detailed analysis, it talks about how much information they know at practice areas and encourages the students to go gather more information about the practice areas, which is something we hear that from career counselors that students often aren't doing enough of. And so finally, as an example of jumping farther ahead to like a 3L report, so this would be 6 in the sequence. So zero in on your work environments, values, and how you stand out. So looking again, in introduction, we're talking about the fall semester of the 3L. We're talking about on-campus interviewing. We're helping the students understand the context of this report and how we're trying to help them. And then we come down and talk about how they get an activity for how they can look at workplace fit factors, environment, culture, and values, and really helping them sort their values and understand how those values play into the choices they're going to make on what kind of law firm or law situation they want to be happy in. And then finally, we're looking at that legal trade analysis, finally kind of going through an activity that talks through those 22 traits. And again, you'll notice we have a video here explaining this and a detailed activity so they can understand what this means, but more importantly, how to take advantage of it, how to understand what this might mean for their legal career and how this might actually give them real advantages and what else to look out for when they go into a law firm and as they start their legal career. So we wanted to really transfer from just visual, like, hey, here's some information, to what do we do with this information as a student? And so that's one of the big changes we've started to go make. So we've added a couple of optional pieces that are really brand new that apply to certain specific circumstances. They're available to you to use as desired. So one of those is going to be verification. So it's a special kind of chapter. And in fact, we have a special verification report that's pre-built and ready to give to students. What this does is it's specifically designed to help a student verify which one of the 16 Myers-Briggs type indicators or union types is their best fit. And many certifications for MBTI say this step is really mandatory. So what we do is we show the student a report where we're actually effectively giving them 16 reports across all 16 types, but we show them kind of how they're ranked. We don't give them the letter code because we don't want them confused on that. We want them focusing on just identifying which one is them. We have video instructing how to go do this, detailed instructions. And once they've had a chance to compare a bunch of patterns, then they can go through and verify the 16th, whatever of the 16 types is most them. And then all the reports that are using that psychological model will update. Note, this does not affect the legal-based chapters. So this is not part of the 22 traits and the comparisons with legal. This is instead about how we help that student understand themselves and understand their behaviors better. So we find verification helps students be more engaged. They feel more confident in the results. And part of our goal here is to help students overcome the resistance to psychological testing and models by really helping them engage in that process. And so it's encouraged and optional. So you decide if it's a fit for your process in your school. Another type of option we have is explorables. And you were seeing that in the, so they're kind of optional components to help students understand and explore topics in detail. So one of the ones that's available to you as your staff and your students, if you want it, is the Magnificent 16. It's effectively an entire video course. There's more than 160 videos. And what it does is it talks through the details of Jungian psychological type, what it means, how it works. It's effectively a training in psychological type. And so you can use this if you want to. You can just give this to your staff, and then you yourself and your staff are using it as basically an additional training course for free in our software that you can do for yourselves. You can also give it to students as part of a class that makes sense, or to give them more grounding in psychological type for those students who that's a great fit for. So this is really a great example of us making more content available. We hope for you it has a lot of value as an extra training, but you can go use that.